Up next on the forum, infant deaths are on the rise in Hampton Roads, but the cause may not always be what you expect. How can you help an elder loved one in the throes of depression? And find out about a program that can help you create some balance in your life as you grow older. Human Services Forum begins right now. Hello and welcome to the forum. The annual Hampton Roads Child Fatality Team Review reports a rise in the number of child's deaths over the past year. To discuss this disturbing trend is Bessie Marie Renner, who's Executive Director of Prevent Child Abuse Hampton Roads. Bessie, welcome to the show.
Thank you
the
for
report, which comes out every year, profiles what is going on in the area. The deaths of children are reviewed, and they also look for trends, and those are shifting through time. We did have a larger number of children, though, dying from abuse and neglect.
Yes.
This past year than in the year before. How many children, and can you tell me a little bit about what may have been the causes?
Sure. 2011 we had 10 deaths. In 2012 we had 16.
And that's in the Hampton Roads
And that's in the
region.
Hampton Roads area, and it's specific. Those were specific to abuse and/or neglect.
Okay.
We had 25 deaths this past year that occurred due to unsafe sleep situations or environments. So unfortunately, that's been on the rise, and it's a trend that we need to work on and eliminate.
We had discussed this a little bit earlier about the fact that there is an increase in the number of child deaths that may be related to sleeping practices or unsafe sleeping practices.
Yes.
And that there may be more, but that can also be because there are newer ways of looking at and investigating and concluding as to what are the circumstances surrounding a child's death.
Sure. We now have child fatality review teams throughout the state of Virginia, which actually sit down and look at each one of the cases and review what may have been the cause of death or what could have led up to the death of the child. And with the unsafe sleep practices, a lot of it just goes back to the fact that they are loving, caring parents that truly do care about their children, but due to some of the things that they have done, as maybe put a child co-sleeping in a bed with them, and just rolling over, while they're asleep themselves, and unfortunately crushing the child, or in situations where they're swaddling in an improper manner and may end up suffocating the child. And those aren't the intentions, obviously, but we need to look at what we can do to prevent that from happening. And the unsafe sleep practices, that's one of the things that we talk about, and the importance of the back is always best. No toys, no pillows in the bed, making sure it's a firm surface, and then no co-sleeping. It's okay to have your child in the room with you in their own bed, but not in the bed with you.
It's too easy just to nod off, fall asleep, and then do something unintentionally.
Absolutely.
Also, say if you're a new parent, all those accoutrements, those things that go with inviting a new child into your life are very hard to resist. Not only from the parents' perspective, but also from the friends and family who want to celebrate with them by giving them things.
Absolutely. We talked about, and I will be honest, I was guilty of it myself. I wanted to decorate my son's room and have the bed bumpers and the blankets and all of those wonderful things, but as beautiful as they are, they can also unfortunately can cause death. So get those things out of the bed. You only need to put the child on the back in the bed. It doesn't need to have, again, all those toy stuffed animals and pillows and blankets and things of that nature. Get those out of there, because those could be a hazard.
Yeah, well, I tell you, culturally, it's quite a pull to bring all those things in at the beginning, and also with babies sleeping on their backs. Although I think the practice is more people are hearing about that, but it's hard to break generational habits and advice and pressure
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But back is always best.
Back is always best. It's a very good and catchy and memorable phrase. So hopefully, people will take note of that. There are also videos online. I think EVMS has one.
Yes.
Eastern Virginia Medical School. If you go online and Google EVMS, you'll find a video from one of the medical examiners who talks about her experience and what she sees as the most common causes of unintentional infant deaths,
Yes.
things that can be prevented. And she says in every case that she talks about, it could have been
Absolutely.
prevented. So those are things that certainly new parents or returning parents can benefit from, good sleep practices for themselves and for their child.
Yes.
There are other children, though, within this report who had dealt with abuse that was
Yes.
intentional and resulted in the death of a child. And unfortunately, those numbers grow along with other issues, and the abuse
Yes.
and stress levels of parents. Finding a way to temper that and deal with it is not only a challenge for the parents, but for the organizations that really want to support the safety of children.
Right. Well, and I think as a community, if you see someone stressed out, lend a hand. Or have a conversation with them. Help out any way you can. It takes a village to raise a child. So I think it's important, if you see signs or telltale or you gut feelings just saying something's not right, it's better to act on it and be in the best interest of the children than to kind of wait and see what happens and then unfortunately possibly end up with a child that doesn't survive.
Well, acting on it there's a big difference between observing, thinking about it, and acting on it, and it can make a difference. Even if it turns out that the child is going to be okay, it may result in getting help for the parent to deal with issues. But
Absolutely.
How does a person act on it if they feel that they're going to be they're witnessing something or they suspect that something's going on?
Well, I think the first thing is if it's something of a mild nature. Obviously, if you're friends with someone, just say, hey, Jan, can I help you out? Or if there's anything I can do to give you some time to kind of decompress. Parents themselves just taking a minute to remove themselves from the situation and count to 10, kind of gather their thoughts. But if it's something that you think if abuse is really taking place and you think that's what's going on, it's better to pick up the phone and call and report it to the Department of Social Services and try to get that family help. And if it's not an abusive situation, then at least you tried and you made that attempt and could have saved a life if nothing else.
That's right. It's better than standing by and saying, I don't want to get involved.
Absolutely.
And up on the screen right now, we have for Norfolk's Child Protective Services number is 664-6022. And there's also a round-the-clock hotline, nights, weekends, and holidays, 1-800-552-7096. So even if you're, and a website too for Prevent Child Abuse Hampton Roads, and a phone number to call. You can reach, you can talk to Bessie Marie, or you can go on the website or email her at the email address on the screen. But there are certainly many resources. Child sexual abuse, also a growing concern, and
Yes.
one that has been extremely difficult to talk about, for people to talk about, and also for people who are experiencing it, as well as those who may be working with folks who are.
Yes.
Devastating and yet quite prevalent, but people just don't talk about it.
It's that one subject that nobody is comfortable with. Nobody wants to admit is happening. Nobody wants to get into the discussion about it. And I think as unfortunate as the issue with the Sandusky case is concerned, it was good to see the media as well as the community as a whole come together and say, okay, this obviously is a problem. We need to do something about it. Here in Hampton Roads, we had 266 cases that were related to child sexual abuse. And this, again, covers all of Hampton Roads. But What a sad statistic.
Yeah.
I mean, we really need to work on that. And one of the things that we're doing with Prevent Child Abuse Hampton Roads is Darkness to Light, which is a training that teaches folks about some of the telltale signs, things that you can do, something as simple as not leaving a child alone with an adult, just one adult. I mean, just things of that nature that particular training offers that we provide, but then also there are other agencies that obviously provide other things with regards to child sexual abuse as well, and what we can do to prevent it from happening.
Yes, and the prevention is, it's difficult to know what people are going to do, what motivates people, but doing all you can is certainly a good first step. Dealing with the aftermath is a different story, but things are being done there too to help obtain a better idea of how to treat some of the children that are that have been affected by this, and we'll be talking more about that in future shows. So
looking forward
thank
to
you
it.
very much for joining us, and
Thank
welcome
you for having me.
To Prevent Child Abuse Hampton Roads and to our show, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank
Best
you.
of luck to you in your efforts.
Thank you so much.
When we return, we'll tell you about an upcoming event to raise awareness about depression and what you can do to help yourself or somebody else.
For those dealing with the daily struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. That's why AARP created a community with experts and other caregivers to help us better care for ourselves and the ones we love.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 88. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Our world is growing older, and the number of people that exceed the ages of 85 years of age are going to grow larger. Along with that, of course, will be the issues that come along with aging. That is, losing your abilities physically, and to some extent. There could be financial issues, and a whole litany of reasons why people can start to feel down and perhaps depressed. And in fact, with Elaine Roberts joining me, she's founder of Still Standing, a suicide survivors group. Suicide is certainly one of the larger percentage groups in that age group of 85 plus. We're all heading in that direction, but doesn't mean we're all going to have to go that route, and we don't want it to. So she's here to talk a little bit about what it is that people can look for in terms of people that might be depressed, what some of the triggers could be to lead them into feeling low or more. And in some cases, it can ultimately end tragically. We just hope that there are loved ones and others that can be there to be as much support as possible, although you can never prevent everything from happening.
Well, I think that is key to having that support, and people who understand the risk factors, what to look for. And it's important, really, with all ages, if you see changes in behavior. With younger people, it could be aggressiveness. With seniors, it could be sadness, although there are some that are the same in all ages: sadness, fatigue, loss of interest in activities. I think with seniors that it is absolutely, they will complain about physical problems. And
aches and pains.
Aches and pains, and they'll go to their primary care providers. And there was a study of 40 post-mortem cases, And out of those, 48% had seen their primary care provider in the past month. 19% had seen a mental health provider, and they ended up taking their lives. So there's findings to it that encourage primary care providers and their staff to know what to look for. And it's not just a stomach problem or a head, or it's beyond that. It is a depression, because many elderly people are isolated in their homes, or if they're in a care facility, perhaps they don't have family members visiting. So it is absolutely primary that we all are attentive to the needs of others and make sure they get the medical help and the mental professional help that they need. Because there are over 38,000 suicides per year, and probably more, because not every state counts it as a suicide if you don't leave a note. Every 13.7 minutes in America, a person loses their life to suicide.
And you had been telling me a little earlier that the age group, 85 and older, was at one point the largest group. But that's shifting to a younger group, ages 45 to 64
is the largest now.
Which will be our older group should they continue on. So we have a growing population of increasingly older adults.
It's true.
Who may be dealing with some of these things. So, I mean, it just behooves us to understand as much as possible so that we can help ourselves as well as anyone that we may know, our loved ones, to get them some support and help and try to break through the wall that people may build up.
Oh, absolutely. And risk factors are loss. It could be financial loss. It could be loss of a loved one. It could be, loss of your ability to get around. So that's a big one to look for, and be aware that you need to pay special attention, really, to all age groups in that situation.
Yeah, and knowing that you're not the only one that may be losing some ability, and maybe finding a way to work around that and still find some fulfillment in doing other things.
Absolutely, and it's important those checkups, and that they have the medical attention, the checkups we all need to have as well through all of our ages.
The awareness-raising aspect of this, and the group that you work with, which are suicide survivors, you have recognized the need sometimes for people who are grieving the loss of someone who has decided to take that route, the need to remember them and to feel a part of a sense of community with others who have experienced this, because often people will say there's just no way to describe what the feeling is, and everybody's experience is different, as tragic as the next, but still different. So there's an upcoming event that is not only there for people who have been grieving, but for people who know those who have.
Absolutely. And Kathy Wakefield of I Need a Lighthouse lost her 21-year-old son, Jake, in 2001. I lost my daughter, Kyla, in 2004 at the age of 15. We met and decided to start the Beacon of Hope 5K run walk and 1 mile memory walk. And we're in our 6th year, and our event is May 19th. And we're down at the boardwalk, the old Coast Guard station in Virginia Beach. And there's information on ineedalighthouse.org so that people can sign up. And it's for all ages. It's educational and prevention, which is so important. And it's also a place that survivors of suicide, those left behind, can bring a picture, a copy of their loved one. We'll put it on the wall. And you can also form teams. So if you go to that, ineedalighthouse.org, you can see how to form a team if you have lost a loved one and you want to walk in memory of that person as well. But it's a place to come, and you will meet other people like yourself. And it helps to talk, just like the group Still Standing that we meet the second Tuesday of the month.
Yes. People being able to share some of their innermost feelings that they don't feel comfortable sharing with others who perhaps can't even touch what it is they feel.
Right. And I've been told by attendees of the race walk that people thinking about suicide, who have considered it, who have tried it, that actually helps them to come out and see so many people that are there for them to help prevent suicide as well, and that encourages them.
Great. Thank you, Elaine. May 19th at the Oceanfront, Beacon of Hope. 5K race and run and 1 mile walk.
1
Thanks,
mile memory
Elaine.
walk.
Well, still to come, life becomes a balancing act as we grow older, in every sense of the word. We'll have details about a great program to keep you safe inside and outside the home when we come back.
Today is Saturday. Salad on Saturday, fruit on Friday, throw-a-ball Thursday. Water Wednesday, Dr. Jones Tuesday. Let's move Monday, swap us next Sunday.
60 minutes of physical activity a day and eating well can help get your child healthy. So keep them active and eating well every day. Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov. That's letsmove.gov.
Are you restricting your level of activity because you're concerned you may fall and injure yourself? Older adults are the focus of A Matter of Balance, an award-winning program offered through Senior Services of Southeastern Virginia. And Sue Stanley is the Wellness Program Supervisor for Senior Services, and she has details on this program, which has become quite popular. There's an event that may or may not be passed by the time we get this on the air, but it's something they want to do every year, and it will incorporate some of the techniques and exercises that allow people to get a better sense of their environment and how they fit into it and how they can move in it more safely. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, we all hear about people who may be losing their balance, and if you have a parent who's elderly who may be having some balance issues, but you yourself may also have those issues depending on where you are in life and just sort of what's been going on. So it's relevant to a lot of people. And if you are interested in learning more, Sue's here to tell you about a program that actually does give you some great sort of hands-on tips on how to work with what you have.
That's exactly what this is. The program's name is A Matter of Balance, and it actually was developed by Boston University. And this is a program that helps seniors who are afraid of falling, who have fallen in the past, who may be restricting their activities and not going out and seeing friends and doing things that they want to do because of that fear of falling, which then causes them to be isolated and depressed, lose muscle control, lose more balance, and then there's more danger of them falling. Or it can be just for somebody who wants to increase their strength and flexibility and their balance. So we pretty much have just covered everybody.
Yeah. But it's a start for some people. It keeps
is.
it from snowballing into something that can be much greater than it needs to be if you can address it early
Correct.
on. And be the one to actually participate in it. I think that's the big thing, is that you don't have somebody telling you, you're doing it.
Right, exactly. It is hands-on learning. That's exactly what it is. And it's wonderful because it gives the seniors techniques and tools and ways of coping with their environment, both inside their house and outside their house, so that it puts them in control. And everybody feels better about what they're doing when they're in control of what they're doing. So it gives them more self-confidence. These are things that are not just for the 8-week class, and this is a class that lasts 8 weeks, and it's 2-hour sessions once a week. It includes some exercise elements in it too, but it's actual activities, and these are things that when the 8 weeks are over, it goes on and on and on.
So it kind of prepares you for living a freer and better life because you continue to practice it.
That's exactly
You're doing
right.
it instead
That's
of
exactly right.
you're learning how.
Yes, that's exactly.
What are some things? Can you give us some examples?
There are great things that you learn, for instance, about your house and what are safety issues within your house, how you should go up and down stairs, how you should carry things, the lighting in your house. There are all kinds of tips about the lights in your house. Here's an interesting thing. One of the things you should be aware of is you should not walk from a dark area outside into the sunlight without putting your sunglasses on, because the glare can cause you to trip and fall. There are all kinds of little things that you learn in this program to be aware of, so that you are paying attention, and a lot of it is paying attention.
Yeah, we do tend to move through our lives on automatic pilot in many ways when it comes to walking from indoors to outdoors, or putting something up on a higher shelf, or getting on a step stool, or rushing to answer the phone and trying to get down the stairs quickly.
And paying attention where your cords are in your house. Where you have tables, where have you left shoes laying in the middle of the floor. There are all kinds of things that that you can do. But in addition to that, there are a series of exercises and stretching exercises and exercises that help you maintain your balance, that if you continue them and they go on and on and on, this helps you permanently for the rest of your life. You have these tools.
Yeah. So these are workable, hands-on, practical ways of extending and maintaining a quality of life.
Exactly. That is exactly it. And the purpose of senior services is to help seniors live with dignity and choice in their community, and this program is one of those aspects of what we're doing.
And one that people don't often think about, but I can guarantee you there are probably a lot of folks, and I think about those because I hear it a lot, people who have parents who are having falling issues, or or he fell or she fell, as being an opportunity to not only get the kids involved in something positive for their parents, but also to give the parents something to look forward to, something that benefits them and does perhaps in some way increase their independence or maintains their independence longer, which is just so incredibly, it's invaluable.
It is invaluable, and it certainly is helpful to the children, too,
Gosh, yeah.
because they feel so much better about the fact that their parents are in a situation where they are able to use these tools and take control. And isn't it, we've all had relatives that we've felt concern about when things have happened, and to know that there is something out there that they can do makes everybody feel better.
Well, we know that the falling can be the first step toward a lot of other things that go wrong, and as you said, it can lead from one thing to the other, and immobility is not a goal, but keeping moving as much as possible without hurting yourself in the process.
Right.
It's a good one. You can call Senior Services, of course, at 461-9481 and get more information. They have a website at www.ssseva.org. There is a class that is being held at Lady of Perpetual Help in Virginia Beach. That'll be the end of April and into May and June, or maybe the end of May and into June.
Yeah.
8 weeks, though,
8
for
weeks.
2 hours a week.
Yes.
That sounds intensive, but it must be fun because people go to it. I know it's popular.
It is fun and very popular, and the statistics that we have from people who have taken the class, over 97% of the people are going to continue the exercise. Over 97% of the people say they feel better about not worrying about falling. They know that they can control it. It makes them feel as if they have something to look forward to be able to go out and see their friends and not be afraid. There are so many things that they cover, including, just walking on wet pavement. There are lots of things that you don't think about that you should when you're paying attention, so that you don't fall. And so it's a great program. It really is.
And what a great way to end the show. I thank you so much for the positive message. We hope you'll give it a try. Thanks for joining us.